Everybody, please, if you could return to your seats, it would be greatly appreciated. We're very fortunate in the Jewish community that we support what has been a government and a Democratic Party that cares about our issues, and that's because individuals make a difference. And one of those individuals who's been absolutely at the forefront of it is a good friend of mine, also from Miami, Florida, Steve Battelle.
Thank you, Michael. Last year, I had a meeting arranged in my office with Governor Richardson. My staff person handed me a file the night before with some background information that I read to prepare for the meeting. I didn't know a lot about the governor a year ago, and I was very surprised by what I read. A 15-year member of Congress, real legislative experience getting things done. Appointed to be the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. Hands-on, real experience, meeting with heads of state, hostage release negotiations, a 4-time nominee to be the Nobel Peace Prize winner. After that, he was appointed by President Clinton to be the Secretary of Energy. Really the only candidate for president who's really done something about energy policy, not just talked about it and voted about it. When the Clinton administration ended and his term as Secretary of Energy ended, he went back home to New Mexico, where in a Republican state he was elected governor. Lowered taxes, increased jobs, built a light rail system. While governor of New Mexico, worked with the governors throughout the country as the head of the Democratic Governors Association, raised $28 million, and had a lot to do with governors winning seats in state houses around the country. And most of our recent presidents have been governors because they have the real executive experience that it takes to be the president. He recently was reelected by a 69% majority as the governor of New Mexico, overwhelmingly again in a Republican state. So when he made the call and said, would I support him, I said, easy call. No one's got a resume like this. And so when we had that meeting and it said that he spoke Spanish and he walked in, I greeted him in Spanish because, like usual, I had to test him. The surprise was when he responded to me in French because he wanted to test me. So when asked, Governor Richardson is a real guy. This is a time when, as Americans, we need someone who's going to stand up and tell us what they really believe. It's not going to be a professionally packaged politician, but someone who really speaks the truth. And this is a guy that speaks the truth. This is the real deal and a real candidate. Governor Richardson.
You know, it's hard to follow a rock star. There's, a lot of commotion, and many of you depart briefly, and I'm used to that. But I think this election should not be about electing who's the best rock star or who has the most resources. And so I wanted first, now that I shocked you, to thank you for this invitation. I hope you appreciate this. You know, you have all these other candidates. They all, come in their cars and caravans from Capitol Hill. I came all the way from New Mexico. I was on Delta Airlines last night. And I want to tell you, the first thing I'm going to do as president, there's going to be a passenger Bill of Rights. They don't tell you anything. They keep you in the runway. They push you. And thank you very much for this invitation. And to Stephen Battelle, thank you. Thank you for helping me. Thank you in Florida for stepping up for me. Thank you for being a great member of this outstanding organization. To many of you in the audience, you always get in trouble because the people you get upset are those that you don't mention. but I just saw Karen Adler, who, when I became UN ambassador, she did the first party for Barbara and me, my wife, when we came into New York, and June Fisher, and the chairs and vice chairs, Michael Adler, Mark Stanley, Cynthia Friedman, Sarah Adler. Do the Adlers run this thing? Steve Grossman, Mark Winkleman, so many of you, Daphne, my dear friend. Daphne, I'm in good shape. She says I'm still her second choice. That's fine. And so many of you here that have been very helpful to me. You know, I want to talk to you a little bit about a variety of issues, why I'm running for president. I think more than anything, I think we need to bring this country together. You know, apart from all the issues and all the foreign policy and national challenges that we have, I think that's what we need more than anything. I know that Israel is key to this organization, as there are other domestic issues, but I wanted first to say that as I see the split over the war, as I see the debate on immigration, as I see the enormous divisions between the rural and urban parts of our country, I see an American middle class striving to just get an even shot. High health care costs, pensions, wages, can't afford having kids go to college, poverty in our major cities, 1 out of 2 African American Hispanic kids not graduating from high school. We need to bring this country together, but I'm an optimist. I think we can do it. I think we can do it with governance, with responsibility, and I think we can do it mostly by recognizing that this country right now needs change. Now, on Israel, you know, I've dealt with many of you on this issue. I was in Congress 15 years. I've always been there for Israel. The Jewish community, organizations like yours have always been there for me, helping me in my races for Congress, making sure that we take the right positions and explain them. I've been with you at the United Nations when my first week, cast 2 votes to protect Israel from a General Assembly that wanted to make dramatic statements about settlements. I'm there as a governor and as Secretary of Energy when we shared a number of solar energy projects. And what you know about Israel, and I have been to that great country 12 times, is that on solar and renewable energy, we can learn a little bit about Israel rather than the other way. And I found that we built some very strong relationships. As a governor, New Mexico has 3 trade offices in the world. We're a small state. We're not like New York or Illinois. We have a trade office with Mexico, Japan, and Israel, $30 million in trade. And I'm the first governor that purchased Israeli bonds, $15 million. And we did it. So one of my messages among all these candidates, and they're going to talk to you about foreign policy and how I'm going to vote, how we brought countries together, how we created jobs, how we stood with Israel, how we stand for civil rights and pro-choice, and what we're doing about sexual orientation. Here's the difference. I've done it. I've done it. I want to just say to all of you, what would I do as president in the Middle East as it most vitally affects Israel? First, I would say to you honestly, candidly, that today Israel is less secure than it was 6 years ago. Hamas, I just saw what happened. Hamas announced that they're going to start bombing the southern side of Israel because this truce is not going to work. I see Hezbollah stronger. I see Iran saying they're going to have nuclear weapons. I say an Israeli-Palestinian peace process not happening. Israel is not more secure. As president, I would bring back a Middle East peace envoy. I would ensure, and this is one thing that I believe because of this dramatic possible change in the geopolitical situation in the region, I would ask the question, are we providing Israel with enough military and economic security funds? Possibly we may need to increase that. But most importantly, I would advocate the two-state solution. I would push forward on a peace process. I would find ways desperately to see the Middle East not in the context of an American foreign policy that is obsessed with a war in Iraq. And what that has caused, that obsession with Iraq, has caused us as a country to fail to focus on the real threats to America, the threats of international terrorism, the need to build international coalitions to fight it. Nuclear proliferation, a dirty bomb or a loose nuke or a terrorist putting his hands on uranium or nuclear material or a rogue nation selling nuclear materials on the black market. We don't have policies to deal with securing all of these fissionable material. Global climate change. This is a national security issue too, not just an environmental issue. Because the planet is saying to us that we have to dramatically change and treat it with less fossil fuel pollution and man-made efforts to control it. So I believe that what we need is a policy that deals with all of these issues in the Persian Gulf, that deals with the transnational issues of nuclear proliferation, of terrorism, of a peace process that is so necessary, of environmental degradation. I also want to say to you that I think it's critically important that we be honest about Iraq. You know, a lot of candidates, they got all these positions and, you know, on the one hand, on the other hand, on this hand. Here's what I would do on Iraq, and I'm going to be very clear. If I were president today, I would withdraw all our troops, all residual troops, by the end of this calendar year. Now, what I would do as part of that effort is 3 dramatic diplomatic engagements. One would be a reconciliation effort that would bring the 3 entities, the Sunni, the Shia, the Kurds, they all hate each other, in a political compromise led by the United States that deals with boundaries, like the Dayton Accords, separate each 3, that deals with a division of energy ministries, divide up the oil power, divide up oil revenues, and a coalition effort, a coalition government that would be led by an Iraqi federal government. That would be using the leverage of a withdrawal to make that happen. The second effort, I would bring an entire security and reconstruction strategy. Security, Saudi Arabia, Turkey. I would invite Egypt, Muslim countries, to be part of a future security framework, led by the Iraqis, by the way, who should be handling more of the security than they're doing today. You know what else I would do? I would bring Iran and Syria. And that would be tough negotiations. And by the way, I would find it unacceptable if Iran had nuclear weapons. But at the same time, I think there's a community of interests, potential common interests that could be sought to bring some stability to the area. That's what I would do with Iraq. I would then have a donor conference so that issues relating to reconstruction, I'd bring the Saudis, I'd bring Europeans, I'd bring the World Bank to find ways that we can rebuild this country. I would reposition those forces that we have in Iraq in areas that we need to fight international terrorism. It could be Kuwait. It certainly would be Afghanistan, where we have to find ways to deal with al-Qaeda and the Taliban in a growing threat. It would also preposition him in the Persian Gulf to deal with any contingency that we might have. I'm often asked, your first few days, and I know you're time slot is coming up, and I know the Israeli ambassador is following me, and I would not be rude enough to trample on his time. So I'll be a little brief and tell you what I would do as president my first 6 days. Let's say the election just happened. I'm taking office. The first day I would announce this plan on getting out of Iraq, because I think that's the center of the divisions in this country, because you take the close to $600 billion that we have in this war and shift it to other foreign policy priorities that I mentioned, but also to dramatically needed domestic needs like a national health care plan or scholarships, a national scholarship for every American. That would be day one. You get out of Iraq. Day two. You know, I noticed the candidates talk about energy. Well, I was Secretary of Energy, so I know a little bit about this. And they all have their energy plans. I would pass this bill, I would pass that bill. This is what I would do. I would have a Marshall Plan, an Apollo Plan, that says that America is going to shift its dependence from foreign oil, which is 65%, to 10% in 10 years. 10 years. And we can do it. And it will be solar, wind, biomass, public and private investment in renewable technologies and renewable fuels. It would be fuel cells, distributed generation. It would be 40 miles per gallon vehicles. It would be a commitment to biodiesel. It would be a commitment to ethanol, a commitment to biofuels. But I would also say to every one of you, and I'm going to use the word that is not politically popular, it's called sacrifice. I'm going to ask every American to do their bit, to sacrifice in the name of energy efficiency, but also national security. Where is this 65% coming from? It's Saudi Arabia, it's Nigeria, it's Venezuela, it's Persian Gulf countries that exactly are not our friends. So it's a matter of energy security and national security. And at the same time, on this second day, I would announce a global coalition to not just return to the Kyoto Treaty, but replace it with a stronger treaty that has mandated reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, that has cap and trade entities, that has a major effort to say to the Chinas and Indians that are not participating that you now have to participate because we, America, will lead the effort. And I would have goals that are dramatic and strong, because I believe that today what you're seeing is an intensive degradation of our seas, our ecology, planet that is basically saying to all of us, you need to change. That would be the second day. The third day, I would announce a plan to say that every American has a right to universal health care. And we can do that with the ingenuity of, one, recognizing that 31% of health care costs are mired in bureaucracy and mired in red tape, and that we have to do better. But I would focus on areas that we have neglected in our national health care plans. It's called prevention. It's called dealing with health care with kids. I would get rid of junk food in schools, as I've done as governor of New Mexico. I would adopt initiatives that promote healthier lifestyles, give incentives to companies that let their employees work out and lose weight like I'm trying to do. Find ways that we have healthy breakfast for every child. National smoking bans that deal with preventive health. Efforts, too, to recognize that we should be a nation that is investing in medicine, in science, in stem cell research, that we're investing in preventing cancer and preventing diseases like malaria that afflict the third world, or preventing ways that we can say that the Democratic Party is once again the party of research and development, of science, a party that cares deeply about finding cures to the diseases that are racking every American today. The fourth day, I would take off. The fourth day, I would announce a plan for revitalizing American schools, education. You know, we're not competitive in science and math. We're not. China and India graduates more engineers. They test better than our kids. Competitiveness is here at risk. I would have preschool for every child under 4. I would have a national system that pays our teachers better. I would have minimum wage for our teachers. I would find ways, too, that I'd have full-day kindergarten. I would find ways that we revitalize the high school K through 12 curriculum to emphasize not just science and math, but emphasize languages, arts in the schools. A total revitalization of our high school curriculum to make us more competitive. I would shift the massive bureaucracies and funding that we spend in our schools away from bureaucracy and staff into teaching, into advanced placement, into curriculum changes. I would find a way, too, for every American to have the ability to get a scholarship to go to school, to go to college, to go to vocational training, to go find community college assistance. That would be the cornerstone of my presidency. Now, let me conclude with why me, right? I mean, you want to hear that. Or some of you are saying, this Richardson guy seems like a nice guy, well qualified, good looking. Well, let's not overdo it. But can he win? Right? I mean, like, I love Sarah Ehrman. She's thinking that. God, I've known Sarah for 30 years, and she's a wonderful friend, and she's saying, God, and I know I'm her second choice, but that's okay. So, I think this election should be about who's the most qualified and who can win. You're Democrats. This is a partisan group. I think we have to look at those factors intensively. First, who's the most qualified? Well, all the candidates that you've heard here, and I think I'm the last, I think they're all qualified to be in the White House as my vice president. But when I say that, I think you have to look not just of, what have you done and where have you been, but have you delivered? I've delivered as a governor for my state. We've created jobs. We've made schools better. I've cut taxes. Fastest growing economy in the Southwest, 6th fastest growing in this country. We brought renewable energy companies. We brought movies to our state. Per capita has moved up. They call it the New Mexico miracle. We've made our schools better. We've become the clean energy state because of our incentives for solar, wind, biomass. I would do all that as president. But we've been able to bring people together, Republicans, Democrats, business community, churches, community groups, to pass massive amounts of legislation that deal not just with recognizing that New Mexico is a state that needs to move forward, but we've built a sense of community. And I got 40% of the Republican vote. Now, I don't know what they were smoking that day, but I did. And so I... Yeah. And, in New Mexico, we became the 9th state to pass a medical marijuana bill. Now, I'm against decriminalizing marijuana, but I saw people suffering, and I pushed this bill, 199 people with proper safeguards in matters of human rights. I mean, these were cancer-stricken victims that were simply saying, I'd like a chance to, to grow and to find peace. And so we made it happen, and it passed. And I'm catching grief over that. All the sheriffs are mad at me around the country, but it's the right thing to do. So, being a governor, history has shown that governors are elected. Carter, Reagan, Clinton, Bush. Well, maybe that's not the best one, but we're CEOs. I've managed a state. I've run a state. I've managed a bureaucracy, 110,000 people in the Department of Energy. History is with governors. Number 2, foreign policy experience. I've been there. I've negotiated with Saddam Hussein, with the North Koreans, with Sudan. And I want to commend you for the work you've done on Darfur, this great organization. I thank you. and you're part of the Save Darfur Coalition. But I was there 2 months ago in Darfur. We got an American journalist out, Paul Salopek. We got the government and the rebels to get a 60-day ceasefire. Very fragile, but we improved things for humanitarian workers. We found ways to set up a process to stop one of the huge atrocities in this world. Rape as a weapon of war. I've been there. I've done this. I've brought these countries together. In fact, President Clinton used to say, North Korea, Iraq, Sudan, send Richardson, bad guys like him. And so what I'm trying to say is that I think we need to remember what Yitzhak Rabin said. And he said, that great Israeli prime minister, Nobel Prize winner, he said, you make peace with your enemies, not with your friends. And so the third point, you know, we need to have candidates that can win around the country. You're all from everywhere in the country, not just Los Angeles and New York City. There's a Midwest out there, states like Ohio, states like Florida, and the Southwest, where we can bring several states. Now, Senator Kerry, who was our strong candidate, lost Ohio, but had he won 3 states where he lost by slight margins, New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada, he'd be president today. And today, 5 out of 7 governors from Canada to Mexico are Democrats. 4 years ago, 7 out of the 7 were Republican. So that's a part of the region in this country that I believe we can bring. And I'm going to outwork everybody. You're going to see me everywhere. Competitive financially, I'm there. I'm not, you know, in the stratosphere. But, you know, money shouldn't be what dictates who's going to be president. It should be issues, where you stand. And rock star status shouldn't be that. I mean, you know, some of us are working on it, but, you know, it should be, what are we ready to do for this country? Now, I know I'm moving up. I have been. You know, I'm the only candidate that is moving up. Of course, I started out below the margin of error, but you know, I'm moving up. You know the polls. We're doing fine, and you're going to see some of these debates. I think you should demand that we have plenty of debates. I know you're very closely tied to the Democratic National Committee. You know, we should have debates. Candidates should attend. There should be forums. I hope you have a presidential, well, I guess you're having it right now, but that's good. And we should be in the arena. This party needs a debate about its heart and soul. And there's nothing like a primary process that, once again, is important. The voters in the living rooms of Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, the early primaries, they haven't made up their minds. And maybe when you're here and you talk to all the pollsters, you're in the East Coast, and they tell you, well, you know, the election's going this way, this is what's going to happen. In fact, I heard one of you say, I don't know who it was, the next president of the United States. It wasn't me, it was the candidate before me. Okay, you say it for all of us, good. Well, that's right, one of us will do it. Anyway, I'm sorry I didn't give you my prepared speech, but you know, this is a group that I've known a long time. I wanted to kind of speak to you from the heart. I wanted also to thank you again, because many of you have written checks for me over the years. Some of you have hosted events like DAFNA and just last night in Los Angeles. Some of you have, or 2 nights ago, some of you have, is Steve Grossman here? He had to leave. You know, Steve and I go way back, and we went to Darfur together. But I thank you. Do you want me to take questions? I don't want to have the Bill Titleman. Now I'm getting in trouble. Is the ambassador here?
We have time for a few questions.
All right. Thank you. Can I have a little more? Go ahead. Go ahead.
If this works. Governor, we got voice? Here we go. You started through Genesis, and I'm kind of anal retentive. I've got days 1 through 4 of your administration, and I know day 7, but I want to know about 5 and 6.
Okay, well, one was Iraq. The second was a plan to become energy independent. The third was climate change. The fourth day, I said I would have a national health care plan. The fifth day was education. The sixth day, I would basically say, I got to my first 5. I think one of those days I said I would take off. But the sixth day, you know, I would state that as president, I don't know if you need legislation immediately, but, you know, I was very concerned about what the Supreme Court did on abortion, on partial birth abortion, because I think it shows that an erosion of the right of a woman to choose has been started, and I see possibly a rash of 5 to 4 decisions there. I think that is unhealthy. Let me also say something that I believe is a coming civil rights issue in this country, and that is and I would say this, that's an issue of sexual orientation. I believe very strongly that we should be a nation of civil rights for all people, and that means sexual orientation. And I would push for federal legislation that enhances and protects domestic partnerships, civil unions. As in New Mexico, we have the most progressive laws affecting gay and lesbian and transgender people. We would push for legislation that recognizes that this country should not discriminate. And I would restate those formal values of the Democratic Party. And that is a woman's right to choose. That is the importance of establishing protections for sexual orientation. That would be issues relating to affirmative action and civil rights. I would also say that as part of that, I would make a concerted effort to pass a national immigration plan, a comprehensive immigration plan. And its foundation would be 4 principles. One, it would be we've got to secure our borders. There's no question about it. More border patrol, more technology, not the silly wall that the Congress has put up between Mexico and the United States, but clearly. Secondly, a legalization plan based on a path to legalization that deals with if you speak English, you pay back taxes, pass a background check, find ways to embrace American values, not get ahead of those that are legally trying to come forward. Third, those that knowingly hire illegal workers need to be punished, prosecuted. That doesn't happen in this country. Fourth, it's called foreign policy, a relationship with Mexico, where you say to Mexico, my God, you're our friends, and you speak candidly to friends. And that is, let's have some joint border job creation. But at the very least, stop giving maps to those workers and those people that come in finding the most porous areas in this country. That would be the 6th day.
You have time for one more.
All right. Okay. Daphne?
Good. You know, in talking about immigration, one of the things that I talked to you about before is 40% of all our inmates in penitentiary across the country are illegal immigrants. And they cost us on an average of $150,000 a year per inmate. So my question is, shouldn't that be a part of the immigration plan to have other countries responsible for their own citizens that come here illegally to commit crimes?
Yeah, obviously. And this is why I believe you have to have a background check, that anybody that applies for legalization, that has to happen. There has to be more personal responsibility by other countries. But I think fundamentally what we need to look at is how do we find ways to deal with those that are coming in illegally, and what do you do realistically with those that are here? And, you know, what makes everybody feel good is, all right, let's deport everybody. I'm talking about the Congress. Let's find ways to deny citizenship to those children of immigrant kids. Constitutionally, they have a right to be Americans. I don't think that's a solution. That's not America. What I would do is you try to be practical, and you find ways to set up a path to legalization. And that is a path that has requirements, like speaking English, passing background checks, paying back taxes, embracing American values, paying a fine for those that have, because you've come here illegally, not get ahead of those that are trying to come legally. The last point I would do on immigration is I would deal with legal immigration. You know, there are a lot of people that are trying to come here on a legal basis that because of backlogs can't come in. They're European, Israel, Irish, Indian, based on job skills. I think based on family reunification, we should up that legal immigration number. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Governor, here it comes. A year from now, when you are the nominee of our party, we want to invite you to come back to our second conference so that we can help you become the next President of the United States. Thank you. Everybody, if you please could keep your seats. The ambassador is here.
I'm going to fix this. It's bumping all day. So I'm going to have to take it down, okay? I'm sorry.
Okay. Everybody, please, if you could keep your seats. Hasn't this been a fabulous conference? Can you believe how fortunate we have been? Nobody in this whole country these last few days has had the type of program that we have. And I have to thank all of the people who have worked so hard. You know, we have great staff. Ira Foreman, Steve Rabin. And, you know, there's some people who don't really get the accolades, but Dolores Henderson and Rebecca Morrow, thank you so much. We have flowers for you. We appreciate, okay, all that you have done. I have to thank the co-chairs, Sarah Adler, Mark Winkleman, and Steve Grossman, who had to leave. Thank you. All of the people who worked so hard on the committee, and especially Natalie Shear. Thank you all so much. The ambassador is going to be coming up here soon. But, you know, he's somebody who, before he became the ambassador, worked for the Jewish Agency for Israel. And I'm an old president of Federation and a campaigner, so we have to take 1 second to tell you, if you've appreciated what has taken place here, we need your help to keep the NJDC alive and healthy. You know, it's been told that you should talk frankly and educate the family. Well, you're the family. And I have to tell you, we need a little help in the family. Our finances aren't as good as should be. They're great pro-Israel supporters in this country, and the RJC is doing well, and AIPAC is doing well. But our NJDC is having a hard time to compete, to get our voice out there. And the only way we can be effective is to call upon you. And I know we ask a lot. We ask each and every one of you to get involved in these campaigns. Pick a candidate. Give generously to that candidate. And if you don't have a candidate, give to all the candidates. They're all wonderful, aren't they? Is there one candidate that you couldn't see as the next president of the United States? Of course not. But when that's all said and done, we need you to be an activist for our NJDC. So who wouldn't stand up and write a check for the NJDC? Come on, I need a little ruach. Stand up. Will you write a check for the NJDC, no matter how small it is? Do you appreciate the effort that has gone on these last few days to put this conference? Mark Stanley would not forgive me if I didn't get you to be motivated, to call to action, write a check. There are cards out there. We need your help. I'm serious. It's been a great conference. I thank all of you for being here. And we are honored to please have all of those who were supposed to be on this closing session come up to the podium. Yes. One of our great leaders who was part of the start of having missions to Israel that led us to this conference. We had an idea that we should bring Governor Dean, as you heard, and then this past summer, we bought the political advisors of each and every one of those candidates you saw to Israel. So not only would we have this conference, but we would be able to have, on a continuing basis, the type of relationship that we need with each one of these important office holders. And at the forefront of our leadership are people who do respond, and at the top of that list is Sunita Leeds. Thank you, Sunita.
Thank you. You know, as we prepare to hear from our final distinguished guest, it's worth reflecting for a moment on the significance of the past few days. With the presidential campaign starting so early this cycle, it is no small feat to get every candidate from either party to address a gathering outside of Iowa or New Hampshire. And so it's especially significant that every major Democratic candidate chose to allocate some of their valuable campaign time to address this gathering of Jewish Democrats. And we can take from this a strong message. The Democratic Party is committed to maintaining a strong relationship between Israel and the United States. With that in mind, it's a distinct honor and a pleasure to introduce our next guest. Ambassador Salai Meridor has been a long and distinguished record. He has a long and distinguished record of public service. As Michael mentioned, he's a former chairman of the Jewish Agency for Israel and of the World Zionist Organization. So service to the Jewish community has been a way of life for Ambassador Meridor. Prior to working with the Jewish Agency, he served as an advisor to the Israeli Ministers of Defense and of Foreign Affairs. He's a former intelligence officer in the IDF, and he's an alumnus of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ambassador Salai Meridor of the State of Israel.
Boker Tov. My friends to the dais, very good friends, I'm especially honored to be here for the fact that you've invited me, even though I have not yet announced my intention to run for presidency. So it's quite an honor. But more seriously, a great opportunity to deeply thank you as a group and many of you individually for your support, hard work to bring the true story of Israel out there to the American people, and in working to assure that the understanding of the importance of this relationship between America and Israel does enjoy large and deep bipartisan support. And this is not only about efforts. I want to thank you about your results, because this friendship and alliance translates into moral support that is extremely important, support to Israel defense in many ways, supporting Israel in Israel's ability to confront terror and defend itself, and in working with Israel in quest for peace. And the nature, the bipartisan nature of this relationship is understood by us to be extremely important, or extremely important, of highest importance, of a relationship that are vital for Israel. I hope they're important for America. I can tell you from an Israeli standpoint, are vital for Israel. And they're based, as I'm sure all of us know, on deep, deep heritage that is shared and values that are being shared. And I think clear strategic interests that are very much shared today between America and Israel, given the fact of the threats to the world, to the region that we are part of, and to Israel. I'll just name a few of them, and I think you'll immediately see how close, naturally close, Israel and the U.S. are. If you take the issue of preventing nuclear weapons from falling into hands of those who may endanger both Israel and the world. If you look at the threat of confronting terror, both regionally and worldwide. If you look at the challenge of maintaining a degree of stability in a region that is quite volatile. If you look at the aspiration to bring the values in which we believe of freedom and equality and human rights beyond our own boundaries to every human being on this planet. If you look at the value and strategic interest of advancing peace globally and in the Middle East. Work on alternative energy resources, both for strategic reasons and for yet other strategic reason, which is to keep the earth safer. And even the area of tikkun olam, of making this world a better place, if you want, from absorbing Ethiopian immigrants in Israel to fighting a genocide in Darfur. So there is a very deep convergence of interest between the United States and Israel, which is at the basis of these relationships. Now, these interests are today under a major, major threat emanating largely from Iran. If you look at the nuclear piece, if you look at terror, if you look at destabilizing the Middle East, if you look at the values that we believe in and confronting them by Iran, and obviously if you look at their effort to jeopardize any attempt to move forward towards peace in the Middle East. And Iran is playing in two layers. One is in different regional theaters, and the other one is with their nuclear program. They're active at least in 5 regional theaters, from Afghanistan, that is not close to Israel, as you know, to Iraq, which is much closer to Israel. And believe me, I know the issue is sensitive in this country nowadays. And there is nothing we want less than being part of a political debate in America. At the same time, I hope that you understand that this debate that takes place in America deals with our own neighborhood, and I hope you appreciate our genuine concerns that the outcome of what happens in Iraq could have major ramifications for Israel's security. Iran is extremely active in Lebanon with rearming Hezbollah, both in order to undermine Senora and at the same time build the potential of a new attack against Israel. And they're working hard towards this summer. At the same time, Iran is backing Syrian effort today for a major buildup of the Syrian army, one that we have not seen since 73. Again, building readiness at least. We hope not more than that towards the coming summer. And in the Palestinian society. And we've been witnessed only yesterday to a Hamas attack against Israel from the south. One should be aware that what happens today in Gaza is a buildup of an Iranian-backed terror state that is as threatening and may become even more threatening than the one that we have witnessed in Lebanon just recently. We're talking about digging underground, smuggling of explosives, extending range of missiles, creating storage of missiles to be able to, in the future, run us through the experience that we've just seen last summer from the north. Dozens of people being trained in Iran by mega terrorists. Very bad news. So it's like an octopus working in the entire region, while at the same time continuing their nuclear program that, in our view, is creating to the world maybe the most serious threat since the 1930s. Why it is a threat to Israel, I don't have to explain to you. Just take Ahmadinejad's statements, couple it with Rafsanjani's statement that Israel would not be able to survive a bomb. Now you can understand why it is a threat to Israel. To the region, don't invite me. Take any ambassador from the Middle East. He'll stand here and explain to you what it would mean to the countries of the Middle East to have a nuclear Iran. And to the world and America, just imagine if they have more control over oil resources, what kind of a political and moral blackmail the West will be under, how they will enhance their incitement of Muslim population in the Western countries, as they did through Hezbollah with the Manar TV station, with a major impact on Muslims in Europe at the time, like 3 years ago. Terror by proxies. And all of that, God forbid, with their own deterrence when they have a nuclear capacity. Who would dare confront them when they have the bomb, if God forbid they have the bomb? And add to all of that the major danger of proliferation. Because in this country, and we all understand that, and in our country, people are looking for smoking guns. Nobody in the Middle East is going to wait for a smoking gun. Countries in the Middle East are already at the beginning of a rush to get their own military nuclear capacity. And before we know it, so many genies could be out of the bottle that we don't want to think about what it would mean to our children. To live in a world that, God forbid, a bomb could be in the hands of regimes of this kind, or maybe even in non-state entities like Al-Qaeda or Hezbollah, in the Middle East or out of the Middle East. So when asked, priorities, one, what's first priority, second priority, third priority? Stop Iran. Some people suggest it can be done. We believe that there is still chance to stop it. But it takes a major effort. Major effort. Starting with a projection from this country. Bipartisan, going back to what I said at the beginning. Because I'm always thinking about what may change the calculus in Tehran. Not what we want to do, what may have an impact on them. If they think that they have only a problem of 20 months to deal with, if you were them, you wouldn't have given up. You wouldn't have changed. But if they are convinced today that no matter what happens here in November 2008, America will not allow, and this is a tough term, America will not allow Iran to get nuclear, then this may have an impact on them, because then it's not a 20 months problem. So that's one. World mobilization. That they feel more and more isolated. They are not North Korea. They are dependent on the world. Then economic steps. Their economy is extremely vulnerable. Steps have been made in this direction, but it is far, far, far from yet having an impact or a sufficient impact. It is sad to say, but the world indirectly is still financing their economy. A third of their external trade is with Europe. For Europe, it's 1% of their trade. For Iran, it's 35%. Their lifeline is oil revenues. Their infrastructure of oil is deteriorating. For them to keep the lifeline, they need investments. The world still invests. Not America, but others. To put it graphically, they import 40% of their gasoline. It looks like crazy, exporting oil, importing gasoline, but this is the fact. Somebody is selling them this gasoline. If you want, the nuclear scientists are driving every morning to work with an important gasoline coming from the outside. So there is a lot to do in the area of economic pressure. And they should know that if everything fails, still all options seriously are on the table, not just as words. That if all fails, still they will not be allowed. Now, if you were there, knowing that America is determined long-term, that the world is more and more united with America on this issue, that your ability to buy the people by crazy subsidies is diminishing by the day because your economy is suffering, and the revolution is under or in danger because of that. And yet, even if you went through all this, you would still not be allowed because the other option is on the table and may be used. Maybe. No guarantees, but maybe they would change their mind. I hate to make analogies to the Holocaust, and I won't, except for one. Our generation rightly challenge our parents and grandparents for what could have been done and hasn't been done in the 30s, when there was still time to act. We owe it to our children and grandchildren not to repeat the same mistake. Now, with this threat, is there some opportunity to advance peace in the Middle East, to transform some of the existing paradigms to something that is more promising? Seemingly, there is a degree of convergence of interest today between Israel and Arab countries in the region, which has not ever been before. When we look at the region and the world, and when they look, the picture we see is very similar. When we have to name our enemies and they have to name their enemies, I think the top of the list is the same. For them, Israel is not anymore the biggest problem of the Middle East or the biggest problem of their regimes. It is Tehran. Is this enough in order to try and build something positive? We don't know, but we certainly hope. This is why Israel is trying every way possible in order to create contacts, to build relationship with those countries. This is why, even though there are negative elements in the Saudi and then Arab initiative, we decided to emphasize the positive and say there are some positive elements and that we would like to get together with them. This is why when they decided in the Arab League only a week ago that they would send to us only potentially Egypt and Jordan and not other countries, and even presented it not as countries who have peace with Israel, but those who have already regained their territories, we did not gut reacted saying, this is what you're sending us. We said we'll talk to whoever you send, because we want to see if this convergence of interest opens a window for working together to confront Iran on the one hand, to widen the circle of peace, and at the same time help bring a change in the Palestinian society, which unfortunately went south in recent months, if you want recent years, since their rejection of the Clinton proposal in 2000, to launching terror attack of Israel that was on for almost 4 years, to their reaction to Israel's evacuating all of Gaza, not leaving one soldier, one civilian behind, instead of using that in order to build for a positive future, to experience and exercise sovereignty, build for growth, used it to launch terror attacks from Gaza against Israel. Their free elections, bringing in a terror government, the unity government they have created, basically compromising the very hope for recognition and peace, and now building in Gaza Hamas, Iran-supported terror base. Having said all that, one could say, what can we do? We do nothing. This is not the choice we've made. We realize the difficulties. We are not going to drive with closed eyes. But with open eyes, we'll continue to look for every opportunity to help bring about a change in the Palestinian choice. This is why we continue to work with our president. This is why we continue to try and strengthen his forces, or help him strengthen his own forces. This is why we try to do everything that we can in order to improve quality in life and make sure that the credit goes to the moderates and not to the extremists. This is why it's so important to keep this firewall between the moderates and the extremists. Firewall that is very clear to the average Palestinian, that they understand that there is hope one way and there isn't hope the other way. This is why we are making every effort to clear for them a political horizon, that they would know that there is hope if they were to choose, if they were to make another choice. But at the end of the day, we cannot make it for them. It has to be their choice. As you know, Israel made the choice to accept the notion of dividing the land to two states, living in peace, in dignity, and security, one next to the other. Wasn't, and you know Israel in and out, wasn't an easy choice. Very, very difficult, very, very painful, involving rewriting our narrative, demanding of us to tell our children that land that has been promised to the Jewish people in the Bible, we are going to give up forever. The heart of our history, of our heritage, including readiness to uproot the best of Israel from their communities, from their lives, from their dreams, taking the risk of a rift within the Israeli society. But we've made the choice. they have to make an equal choice. That they would realize their own dream fully, but only in part of the land. A choice to give up victimhood for statehood, to replace hatred with hope and terror with peace. There is nothing Israel wants more for our children, and we'd love to happen for their children, than for this to happen. In closing, we are this week, as a matter of fact yesterday, celebrated 59 years of Israel's independence. And there is a lot to celebrate if you just have some perspectives. Where we were 59 years ago and where we are today. 59 years ago, and 2 days if you want, there was no state of Israel. My father was injured, lost his eye in a battle in Jerusalem. My two older brother and sister, brother was already born, my mother was pregnant, but when my sister was born, they were hungry, starving, I should say, in the Jerusalem which was under siege. Altogether, the Jewish people just got out of the ashes of the Holocaust. Israel had only 600,000 Jews and was attacked by the entire Arab world and the Palestinians and was hanging. And where we are today, more than 5.5 million Jews in Israel, hopefully moving fast to the 6 million. In parentheses, I include everybody in Israel who came under the law of return Jewish, no matter if he is recognized this way or the other way by halacha. But 6 million Jews almost in Israel, strong society, strong economy, a strong army, 2 peace treaties, Egypt and Jordan, and most importantly, great young generation, which is really the promise for the future. And all of this has been achieved by the very special spirit of Israelis, by the great partnership with the Jewish people, and by the great relationship with the United States of America. And largely thanks to you, with this tree will continue. Thank you very much.
Take a few questions? Sure. We just have time for a few questions. Yes, Elaine?
Thank God for all that has been accomplished and for all that you've just described and for your very beautiful and meaningful commitment as you've expressed it. But some of us are very, very concerned about the news from Israel in terms of the willingness to exchange whatever number of Palestinian prisoners for 1 or 10 or no matter how many people they've taken hostage, because we see that as an invitation to more hostage taking. And I would just hope you would carry that message back.
This was a message or a question? Both. First of all, I appreciate very much what you've said. And as you can all understand, it's a critical dilemma which has been with us, by the way, as Jews for many, many years. There is more than 1 or 2 debates and answers of rabbis over the generations of how to deal with this issue of hostage redemption, and from which point it is immoral to make, if you want, an exchange, because it may endanger the lives of potential other captives. And by the way, we've seen yesterday in the very, very serious attack that Hamas was launching from Gaza, at least some of our people in Israel are suspicious that this was very similar to what the Hezbollah did in Lebanon just last summer. And it could have been a cover for an attempt to another kidnapping of soldiers. I don't want to get into the details, and I hope you will respect that. I can tell you my open position that our demand of the other side is to release our soldiers with no condition and immediately.
Okay, for our last question, Cam Carey.
I have a message and a question. I was certainly glad to hear you speak of bipartisanship in support for Israel. And I think your being here today is a reflection of that, and I thank you for that. And I thank you for the overview of the situation and the choices. But I do want to talk about what I think is maybe the elephant in the room for some of us. And the elephant in the room is, in fact, an elephant. It is the perception that sometimes members of the Israeli government have sent messages that cut across that bipartisanship. I think back to 2004 when Prime Minister Sharon said that Israel had no better friend than George Bush, to some of the criticisms that we have heard more recently of Democrats. I'm sure you've heard this privately, but I did want to put it out publicly. I happen to believe, as Governor Richardson said, that Israel is less safe today than it was 6 years ago, and that some of that is the result of policies of this administration and forces that's unleashed and reduced our capacity to, as you said, stop Iran. But I don't question George Bush's commitment to Israel or his administration's commitment to Israel. That is something that is bipartisan, and when there is a perception that the governments are putting their thumb on the scales, that I think erodes the perception of bipartisanship. So I hope you reaffirm that the commitment, the bond between the United States and Israel on both sides of the relationship is one that transcends governments and transcends political parties.
First of all, thank you for the comments, both the content and the spirit. And I forgot my glasses in Israel, so I didn't see an elephant in the room. But you raised it in candor and friendship, and let me share with you what I think and feel about it. And I hope you will accept it with the same spirit, or at least listen to it in the same spirit. Unequivocally, the core of this relationship is bipartisan, and we are not only thankful to both Republicans and Democrats and Republicans for that, but this is an asset that Israel would not like in any way to shake. I think that appreciating a president, in this case George W. Bush, as a great friend of Israel, is not running against any of this principle. At least I hope this is accepted this way. Especially when he's not running to presidency, at least to the best of my knowledge, and I've been here only 5 months, so, and I have not yet announced, but I think that constitutionally he can't announce. Now on the matter itself. In any comment we make, and I want you to really think about it, and I'm sharing with you both my thoughts and feelings. There isn't any intention to become partisan, to criticize, I think the term that you used, this party or that party, this member or that member. We wish this war would have been somewhere else. You know, that our best position is where we support America, whatever America does, period. And by the way, here too, we'll support America because we are your unconditional ally no matter what. But realize that this war is in our neighborhood. And we can discuss what's better or worse for Israel. Legitimate discussion. But it should be realized that the outcome of this war may have very serious ramifications, this way or another, and everybody's entitled to his position, could have major ramifications for Israel. If Iran was to feel more confident in pushing forward, if allies in Iran from Hezbollah to Syria to Hamas were feeling the same, if Jordan or the stability of Jordan was threatened. These are all very, very serious issues for Israel. And when we express our positions, our concerns, we are in no way doing that to interfere in any legitimate political discussion within America. But sometimes we have to express our concerns because they deal with critical issues for Israel. I was trying to think of an analogy, you know, because it really, I'm happy that you raised the issue because it troubles me. It troubles me because it's, you're right, it's not an easy situation to say the least. Neither for you nor for us. Take settlement policies of governments of Israel. They were at the core of Israel's national debate and political debate for many years. Maybe not so much anymore, given the choices Israel made, but in the 70s, in the 80s, this was the core of Israel's national debate and political debate. America at the time felt it had to express a position on the matter, which was clearly in support of one stream in the Israeli public debate. We never thought that America was doing that to intervene in a political debate in Israel. We understood that America felt, we regretted it by the way, but on the merits, we understood that America felt that this was an American interest, that they had to express a position. What I'm trying to tell you is that we realize the complexity and the sensitivity, and I hope you understand that when we say something, it is not in any way trying to interfere politically, but only to try and express concerns that are dealing with critical issues for Israel. And we need much sensitivity, all of us, wisdom, cooperation, in order to make sure that in dealing with this current situation, we assure the one asset that is extremely important for the future relationship between Israel and the United States, which is the wide and deep support from both sides of the aisles to the State of Israel and to the value and asset that there is in this highly important relationship. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. We appreciate your being with us, and we look forward to having continued dialogue to make sure that the best of our organization could be part of ensuring that great wisdom and sensitivity as a partnership with you. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
And as we are a Jewish organization, that is why there is a J in our NJDC. It is my pleasure to end as we started. I'd like to call on Rabbi Menachem Gannett to give a benediction.
We're in the midst of two counts. One count the ambassador just mentioned. Yesterday was the celebration of the 59th anniversary of the establishment of Israel, Yom Ha'atzmaut. We're also in the midst of the count of the Omer. And in a week or so, in about 10 days, we're going to celebrate Lag BaOmer. The Talmud tells us that Rabbi Akiva, the great second century sage, lost as a result of a plague all 24,000 of his students during this 49-day period when we count the Omer. Some have interpreted this plague to be a metaphor for the unsuccessful Bar Kokhba revolt against Rome in the middle of the 2nd century, in which Rabbi Akiva himself was later martyred. Whichever interpretation is correct, since that time, the counting of the Omer has been a time dedicated to remembering the terrible tragedy that occurred so many centuries ago. Joy is curtailed, and in particular, several of the laws of mourning are observed. On the 33rd of the Omer, however, mourning gives way to celebration. While the common interpretation of this holiday is that it was on this day that the plague abated, some have suggested a different reason, and that is an insight into the special, indomitable faith of Rabbi Akiva. The Talmud says that after the death of Rabbi Akiva's students, Rabbi Akiva, unbent, traveled to the south of Israel. There he found 5 new students and taught them the Torah. These 5 students became scholars and themselves became teachers, and from them, Torah scholarship was rejuvenated. It is Rabbi Akiva's capacity to persevere in the worst of times and to do so with supreme optimism that distinguished him as the greatest of the rabbis. The 33rd of the Omer celebrates Rabbi Akiva's resoluteness despite an extraordinary setback to forge a new beginning for the Jewish people. The 33rd day of the Omer, Lag BaOmer, is an occasion for us also to be comforted by Rabbi Akiva's great and inspiring optimism. It is a time of desolation. In a time of desolation, he created a new beginning, and amidst destruction, he was able to see the seeds of redemption. In his example, that inspires us to shape for what at times appears to be so little, the possibility for so much. The juxtaposition of Yom HaZikaron, the day before we remember the Israelis fallen, and Yom Ha'atzmaut, the day of redemption, also reminds us about that spirit of Rabbi Akiva. And it's that hope of Rabbi Akiva and his optimism that motivates the state of Israel, and I believe motivates this assembly. And we hope, therefore, for God's blessing on Israel, and then also this great enterprise for good, the United States of America.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for attending. Let this be a new beginning for the NJDC. Go to Israel this year, get involved in your candidacies, and a year from now, tell everybody what a wonderful conference this has been so that we can double and triple our numbers. I look forward to seeing you at the 2nd conference of the National Jewish Democratic Council. What? Yeah. No.
I'm gonna come back to Washington
Nope.
to have lunch with you. All right. You guys did.